The phone rang. Not his work phone, but that other one. Simple, black, with 10 buttons. It sat in a desk drawer and hadn't rung in years. Chung-ho looked at it for 3 seconds. Then he picked it up. Silence. "Hello?" came a voice on the other end of the line. Thin, childish, and full of tears. "Hello, doctor. Please." Ho didn't move. There were no children's voices in his world. There hadn't been for many years. "Mom's not breathing. She's choking. Help!" The voice broke into a scream. There was genuine panic in it. Jong-ho felt something cold tighten inside him. He wasn't thinking. His lips parted on their own. "Address," he said hoarsely. The girl, sobbing, uttered the street name and apartment number. Her words were jumbled. Thank you, doctor. Please, hurry." Jung-ho didn't say he wasn't a doctor. He hung up and pressed the intercom button. "Jin-woo, Dr. Kim, cars are at the entrance. Right now." His voice was even, but there was a steely edge to it that hadn't been there before. He stood up and took his black coat off the back of his chair. Jin-woo, his right-hand man, stood there. The man was prepared for any order, but not for what he heard. "We're on our way, with Dr. Kim. The man is having trouble breathing. The address is in the GPS. Quickly!" Jin-woo nodded without questioning it, but his surprised gaze slid across his boss's face. They didn't do things like that. Never. 2 dark cars sped through the night city. Jong-ho sat in the back seat of the first, looking out the window but not seeing the streets. That voice echoed in his head, childish, frightened. Another face, another voice, long buried in silence, surfaced in his memory. He clenched his fists. Jin-woo said quietly from the front seat, "What are we going to do?" "We'll save a life," Chung-ho answered shortly. "The rest will come later." The car stopped abruptly in front of a shabby 5-story building. Jung-ho stepped out first, not waiting for Jin-woo to open the door. Dr. Kim, carrying a small black bag, followed him. The entrance was dark and smelled damp. They went up to the 3rd floor. The door to the apartment they were looking for was slightly open. Light was streaming through the crack. Chung-ho pushed the door with his shoulder. He entered first. A tiny kitchen. A woman lay on the floor next to a chair, dark-skinned, young. Her eyes were wide open in terror, her mouth gasping for air, but her chest was wheezing and bubbling. Her face was turning blue. A little girl stood nearby, pressed against the wall. She looked at the newcomers with wide, tear-filled eyes. In one hand, she clutched an old telephone. Seeing Chung-ho and the people behind him, she didn't run away. She took a step forward. "Are you a doctor? Please save my mother!" Her voice was barely audible. Jong-ho nodded and gestured sharply toward the woman to Dr. Kim. Without missing a beat, he knelt down next to Mia, opening his bag. Chung-ho didn't look at the doctor. His gaze was fixed on the girl. Amy. He crouched down slowly, so as not to startle her. His dark suit and coat seemed completely out of place in this shabby kitchen. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. His voice sounded unusually soft. "Amy," the girl whispered. "Amy, everything will be fine. This guy is a very good doctor. He will help." He extended his hand, but didn't touch her. He simply indicated that he was there. The girl looked at his face, stern, with a scar at his temple and a hard line at his brow. But there was no threat in his eyes now. There was a strange determination, incomprehensible even to himself. Behind him, Dr. Kim worked quickly and efficiently. Sounds could be heard, hissing, short commands to himself. Then, a long, hoarse, but life-killing breath. Mia coughed sharply, her body shuddering. Color began to return to her face. Dr. Kim turned to Jung-ho. "It's gone. Her airway is clear. But she needs rest and observation. She's under a lot of stress." Jung-ho rose from his crouch. He looked around the apartment, squalid, cold. Amy's toys, neatly stacked in the corner. The empty refrigerator, its door ajar. He looked at Amy, who was now huddled next to her mother, stroking her hand. He looked at Mia's pale but breathing face. His mind, always calculating risks and benefits, was already analyzing the situation. They wouldn't stay here. He couldn't leave them here. The reasons were hazy even to him. But the decision came instantly, as if he'd been waiting for this call his whole life. He took a step toward Dr. Kim and leaned in to speak quietly, but so Amy could hear. "We're taking them with us, to the mansion. You will provide all necessary care. Tell them it's critical to a full recovery." Dr. Kim, a man of science, froze for a second. He looked at his boss, then at the patient and the child. He nodded. He knew it was pointless to argue, and perhaps, deep down, he knew there really was no help for them in this squalid apartment. Jong-ho approached Amy again. "Amy, your mother is feeling better, but right now she needs special care. We'll take you to a good place where everything is in place for Mom's health. The doctor will be nearby, okay?" The girl looked at her mother, who nodded weakly, still unable to speak. Then she looked at the huge, stern man who had saved her mother. She nodded trustingly. Okay, Mr. Doctor. Jong-ho didn't correct her. He signaled to Jin-woo. He carefully, almost tenderly, lifted Mia into his arms to carry her to the car. Jong-ho draped his expensive black coat over Amy's shoulders, who was shivering from the cold and nervousness. It was huge, like a cloak. Let's go, Jong-ho said simply, leading the girl out of the apartment. He didn't look back at this squalid abode. His thoughts were already ahead. In his white, quiet, empty mansion, where life was about to burst in, the cars sped through the night streets, leaving the seedy neighborhood behind. The first car was silent, broken only by Mia's even breathing. She lay in the back seat, her head resting on Dr. Kim's lap. He was quietly checking her pulse. Amy sat next to young Bo-ho, wrapped in his coat like an enormous blanket. She wasn't crying. She stared out the window at the flickering lights, occasionally stealing a glance at the stranger's profile. Jong-ho felt that gaze. He looked ahead, but all his attention was riveted on the small figure beside him. Her trust was as fragile and inexplicable as his own decision. Mr. Doctor, Amy said quietly. Where are we going? To a safe place, replied Chung-ho, where your mother can rest and recover. And then we'll go home? The question hung in the air. Jin-woo tensed in the front seat. Dr. Kim looked up from his patient. We'll see later, Jung-ho said, his voice clear of argument. Right now, the important thing is that she gets better. The car turned off the bustling street into a quiet, gated neighborhood. Treetops flashed past the high fence. The gate swung silently open, letting them in. Amy glued herself to the window. Wow, she whispered. It's like a castle. The mansion truly resembled a White Castle, illuminated at night, minimalistic, austere, enormous, and utterly lifeless. The cars stopped at the front entrance. Jin-woo carefully picked Mia up again. Jung-ho got out and helped Amy out of the car, his coat trailing behind her. He didn't take it. Let's go, he said simply. The interior was as quiet and deserted as Chung-ho's office. White walls, dark polished floors, expensive but austere furniture, not a single unnecessary detail, not a hint that people lived here, only the scent of cleanliness and fresh wood. A woman in a formal dress, Mrs. Kang's housekeeper, waited silently in the hall. Her face was a stony mask, but her eyes flashed with genuine surprise at the sight of the guests. She asked no questions. Prepare the 2 adjoining rooms on the east side. The nursery is for the girl. Bring everything necessary, Chung-ho ordered. His voice sounded its usual firmness, returning the world to its familiar contours. Dr. Kim will stay here overnight, Mrs. Khan nodded, and disappeared into the depths of the house. The rooms they were shown to were beautiful, like those in an expensive hotel. Large beds, soft carpets, marble bathrooms, but they lacked soul. Amy cautiously entered her room. Pajamas were already laid out on the bed, too big for her, but clean and soft. A glass of water stood nearby. Kim laid Mia down in the next room and gave her a sedative to help her sleep and regain her strength. Amy didn't want to leave her mother's side. She sat down on the large chair in the corner of the room and tucked her legs under her. I'll just sit here, okay? She asked Jung-ho, who was standing in the doorway watching. He nodded. Mrs. Khan will bring you some food. You should eat. And you? Amy asked. I'll be right there, he said, and walked out, leaving the door ajar. Jong-ho didn't go to his office. He went into the small adjoining office, which overlooked the corridor leading to their rooms. He sat down in a chair. Jin-woo brought him the reports, but Jong-ho put them aside. He didn't read. He listened to the silence of the house, which was different now. A new sound entered it, the quiet, even breathing of 2 strangers who, for some reason, had become his concern. Mia awoke from a deep, heavy sleep. Consciousness returned slowly. First, she felt an unusual softness beneath her, not her hard sofa, but something sinking, enveloping. Then she felt a strange silence, not the hum of the city, but a deep, dense silence, and a smell, clean, fresh, with a slight hint of lemon or some kind of herb. Not her apartment. She opened her eyes. Above her was a high white ceiling with wooden beams. She slowly turned her head. A large, bright room. Expensive but boring clothes. A sofa, a table, a vase of fresh flowers. Where is she? Panic, sharp and cold, struck her temples. She tried to sit up abruptly, but her body wouldn't obey, and her head spun. The last thing she remembered, dinner, a piece stuck. Amy! Where's Amy? Mom? A quiet voice came from the right. Mia turned around. Amy was sitting in the large chair by her bed, wrapped in some kind of enormous black jacket. She was clutching an empty plate. Amy! Baby! Where are we? Mia's voice broke, hoarse and weak. The door opened slightly. An unfamiliar Asian woman in a formal dress entered the room. You're awake. That's good, she said in clear English, without any emotion. The doctor will be right there. Your daughter is safe. She's eaten and hasn't left your side. Dr. Kim followed the woman into the room. He smiled at Mia, his smile professionally calm. Mrs. Miller. Mia Miller, she answered automatically, clutching the edge of the blanket. What happened? Where are we? You choked on your food, Mrs. Miller. The situation was critical. Your daughter called for help. You were lucky that help arrived in time and that I had the necessary supplies, Dr. Kim said, perching on the edge of a chair next to her. You are now in my employer's home. Here you will be provided with complete rest and the medical supervision you need right now. Such conditions are not available in your apartment. Mia looked at him, trying to comprehend. Her daughter had called an ambulance. They were being taken to someone's house? The doctor's employer? This was insane. We have to go home. Thank you, but— Mom, Amy climbed out of the chair and walked over to the bed. You were completely blue. That doctor guy and the other guy, the big guy, they came and saved you. And this house, it's like a palace. And we can stay here. What other uncle? Mia asked, feeling her anxiety growing. At that moment, a shadow appeared in the doorway. Tall, broad. Jong Ho stood in the doorway, no longer wearing his jacket, wearing a simple dark shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His face seemed even sharper in the daylight, and the scar on his temple more noticeable. He looked at Mia with an appraising, inscrutable gaze. He entered and stopped a few steps from the bed. Amy suddenly smiled at him and ran up, taking his hand. This simple, trusting gesture left Mia speechless. Her clever, cautious daughter had approached this formidable stranger herself. My name is Jong Ho, he said. His voice was low and even, not threatening, but also lacking warmth. Your daughter dialed my number, thinking it was an ambulance. She was begging for help. I came with my doctor. Mia couldn't speak. She looked at him, then at her daughter, who clearly felt safe with him. Why did you bring us here? She finally whispered. Jung Ho looked at Dr. Kim, then back at Mia. Because it was necessary. Now the doctor will explain all the details of your condition. And then, he paused briefly, we'll talk about what happens next. He easily freed his hand from Amy's, nodded to Mia, and left the room, leaving behind only questions and a thick, oppressive silence, broken now only by Mia's heavy breathing. She was trapped, but this trap was the most beautiful and terrifying she could imagine. Docket. Kim finished his examination, nodded with satisfaction, and left, saying he'd let them talk. The door closed. Mia was left alone with her daughter in the vast, unfamiliar room. She took Amy's hand and pulled her close, hugging her. Her daughter smelled of strange soap and new fabrics. Amy, baby, tell me everything from the beginning. What happened? Mia spoke quietly, but her eyes were sharp. Amy, pleased that her mother had come to her senses, perked up. She told her about dinner, about how her mother started clutching her throat, about the old phone with the ambulance number written on a piece of paper, which she'd memorized, how she'd called, cried into the phone, and Uncle Jung Ho had answered, how he'd given her the address and arrived with other uncles and a doctor. He's so big, Mom, and stern, but he sat down next to me and said everything would be fine, and the doctor saved you, and then he gave me his coat. It's heavy. Mia listened, the ice in her chest giving way to the heat of anxiety. A random call. A strange man. A doctor. Security. This mansion. Where is he now, this Uncle Jung Ho? He said he'd be nearby, Amy replied, yawning. The weight of everything she'd been through weighed her down with weariness. Can I sleep here? Mia nodded, settled her daughter into the huge chair, and covered her with the same jacket. Then she stood up. Her legs were shaking, but they held her. She put on the robe lying on the chair and walked out into the hallway. It was long, empty, bathed in cold light from the tall windows. She didn't know where to go, but after a few steps, she saw a door ajar. Behind it lay a small study with bookshelves, and there, with his back to the window, stood he. Jung Ho heard footsteps and turned. Their gazes met. Mia paused in the doorway, choosing her words. Fear warred with anger. Who are you? She blurted out at last. It wasn't a question, but an accusation. What are we doing here? He didn't answer right away. He walked behind the massive oak desk and gestured for her to come in. Sit down, Mrs. Miller. You're still weak. I want answers, not worries. Her voice grew stronger. She didn't sit down. My child says I was suffocating, that you came. Thank you. Thank you so much. But now we're home. We're not in the hospital. We're in your house. Why? Jung Ho looked at her. He saw fear in her eyes, but also strength. She was ready to fight. He liked that. Because your home isn't safe for recovery. Because I have the resources to provide you with everything you need. And because your daughter asked for help, I got it. You received a call, a mistaken one. And instead of saying you made a mistake or calling a real ambulance, you rushed there yourself with your doctor? Mia shook her head. That doesn't happen. People don't have personal doctors on night duty or security cars. Who are you? Jung-ho slowly sat down in the chair. His movements were precise, economical. My name is Jung-ho. I'm in business. I have employees, and among them is a personal physician. That's not so surprising. What business? Mia persisted. He ignored the question. Your daughter called. She was crying. I haven't heard children's voices in my life. In a long time. He paused, choosing his words. I couldn't put the phone down. I acted. I saw her. I saw you, and I realized I couldn't just walk away and leave you there. Then call a taxi and pay the bill at a proper clinic. Don't kidnap people, her voice wavered. This isn't kidnapping, he countered calmly. It's hospitality. Dr. Kim will confirm. You need rest and observation for a few days. The stress was intense. You have both here. Free of charge. Why do you need this? Mia whispered. What do you want from us? Jung-ho stood up and walked to the window, looking out into the garden. Perhaps the silence here has become too loud, he said so quietly she could barely hear him. Then he turned around. You need help. I can give it to you. It's a logical solution. Logical. There wasn't a shred of humanity in that word, but something real flashed in his eyes when he spoke of silence. Vulnerable. What if I say no? What if we want to leave right now? Mia asked, looking at him straight on. He met her gaze. Then Kim will give you some recommendations and Jinwoo will take you home. You'll be in your apartment in an hour. He paused briefly. But before that, I want you to see something. He pressed a button on the desk. A minute later, there was a knock on the door. Mrs. Khan entered, leading Amy by the hand, washed and dressed in clean, pretty pajamas. The girl was beaming. Mom, this bathroom is like a swimming pool. And Mrs. Kang gave me such delicious cookies. And there's a toy shelf in my room. It's empty. But Mrs. Kang said we can fill it. Amy broke free and ran up to Jung-ho, unafraid, tugging at his sleeve. Uncle Jung-ho, can we really stay here? Really? I'm not bothering anyone here. He placed his large palm on her head, barely touching it. You're not in the way, he said. Then he looked up at Mia. The question is, what does your mother want? Amy looked at her mother with pleading eyes. Mom, please. You see, it's so nice and safe here. And Uncle is so kind. Kind. This menacing, silent man with a frightening power in every gesture. Kind. Mia looked at her daughter, who already considered this place an adventure. She saw clean clothes, a well-fed appearance, delight in the eyes, and she contrasted this with the damp apartment, the empty refrigerator, the fear of tomorrow that had haunted her for years. Chung-ho watched her. He saw the struggle. He saw the fear. He pressed her without uttering a single threatening word. The situation itself pressed her. Amy, go with Mrs. Kang and ask her to show you the garden from the window, Mia said, trying to keep her voice even. I need to speak with Mr. Chung-ho alone. As the girl left, slightly pouting, Mia turned to him. That's not fair. You're using her against me. I'm showing you an alternative, he corrected. You can go back to fighting for survival, with someone sick and weakened. Or you can accept help, rest, get stronger. Give your daughter a taste of peace and safety, at least for a while. What's the price? She asked, crossing her arms. Nothing comes for free, especially from people like you. The price is your presence here, he said bluntly. You fill the silence. You and your daughter. I don't need your money. I don't need your services. I need this house to stop being empty. For a few days. For a week. Until the doctor says you're completely healthy. He said it like a business proposition, but his words, fill the silence, rang with that same vulnerability again. A loneliness so profound that even random people became valuable to him. And after a few days? We'll decide. You can always leave. I give you my word. The word of a man she didn't know, but his tone left no doubt. He believed it meant something. Mia looked out the window at the perfect lifeless garden, then inside the house, where her daughter was laughing with a strange woman. She felt trapped in silk and velvet. To refuse would be ungrateful. To frighten her daughter, to return to chaos. To agree would be to make a deal with the devil, whose face was still polite and calm. She took a deep breath. She had no choice, really, and he knew it. Okay, she said quietly. We'll stay. For a few days. Chung-ho nodded, as if simply confirming the inevitable. A wise decision. Mrs. Kang will show you the house. You have everything you need. As Mia left the office, her knees buckled again. She had made her decision, but she didn't know she'd just crossed a threshold from which there was no easy way back. And Jung-ho, left alone, allowed himself a slight, barely noticeable smile. The first step had been taken. The silence in the office thickened again after Mia left. But this time it was different. It was filled with the echo of her voice, her fear, and her agreement. Jung-ho remained standing at the table for several minutes, his fingers slowly tapping out a rhythm on the polished surface. He had achieved the goal of the first stage. They remained. But this was only the beginning of a complex game, the rules of which he was defining as he went along. He pressed the button. Jin-woo! The right-hand man entered almost instantly, expecting orders related to business, threats, and cargo movements. "We'll need things for women," said Jong-ho, looking out the window. "Clothing, everything necessary for a child. Toys, books, quality, simple, nothing pretentious. Ask Mrs. Kang for the sizes." Jin-woo nodded silently, hiding his surprise under a mask of professionalism. "And Jin-woo," Jong-ho turned around, "this house now has the highest security priority. No business meetings here. No reports within these walls. All external contacts will be through you, in the office. There are guests staying here now. Understood?" "Understood, boss." Jin-woo nodded again. "And for how long?" "Indefinitely," Jong-ho said curtly, "until they decide to leave." In that firmly spoken phrase, both men heard the unspoken never. Jin-woo left, and Jung-ho allowed himself to sit in the chair. Amy's voice still rang in his ears. "Uncle Jung-ho, can we really stay?" Meanwhile, Mia and Amy are with Mrs. Khan. The housekeeper, silent and efficient, showed them around the first floor. A library filled to the ceiling with books, Amy gasped. A spacious living room with a fireplace. A conservatory filled with orchids. A huge kitchen gleaming with steel and copper. Everything was immaculate, expensive, and utterly soulless. "It's like a museum, Mother," Amy whispered, holding her hand. "Beautiful, but a bit scary." Mia thought the same thing. The house was overwhelming in its perfection. There wasn't a speck of dust, not a thing out of place. Not a hint of life. "Your rooms and everything you need will be delivered today," Mrs. Kang said, stopping at the massive door leading to the garden. "Breakfast, lunch, and dinner will be served in the dining room, or if you prefer in your rooms. Dr. Kim will visit you twice a day." "Thank you," Mia replied automatically. "And Mr. Chung-ho? Does he usually eat dinner at home?" Mrs. Kang froze for a moment, as if she'd been questioned about the habits of a rare animal. "Mr. Jung-ho usually eats dinner in his office. Or not at all. His schedule is unpredictable." She said it as a statement of fact, but Mia detected a note of something in her tone that might have been pity. Back in her room, Mia closed the door and leaned her back against it. Amy jumped onto the huge bed. "This is better than home, isn't it, Mom? It's warm and soft." "Yes, baby," Mia said quietly. "But this isn't our home. We're just guests. Just for a little while." "But Uncle Jung-ho said we could stay until you get better. That could be a long time." Amy smiled, and her enthusiasm was so genuine that Mia's heart sank. She walked to the window. The garden was vast, well-kept, and empty. A high fence, a cell in the corner, a beautiful golden cage. She had made a choice out of fear and a sense of duty to her daughter, and now she had to live in this cage. Evening of the first day. Dinner consisted of light chicken broth, steamed vegetables, and jelly for Mia, and delicious pasta for Amy. They ate together in the small, cozy dining room. Jong-ho didn't appear. His absence was palpable, like the silence after thunder. Mia was simultaneously dreading his arrival and angry at his absence, feeling like a forgotten toy brought into a stranger's home and abandoned. After dinner, when Amy was beginning to nod off, Mia led her down the hallway to their rooms. As she passed the half-open library door, she heard a quiet voice. Low, even. He was reading aloud. Mia peered inside. Chung-ho was sitting in a deep armchair by the floor lamp. Amy, in her pajamas, was nestled across from him, on a large ottoman, her legs tucked under her. She shouldn't have been there. Mia wanted to go in and get her, but froze when she heard the words. He was reading. Not a business report, but a book. An old children's book in English. About a rabbit. His voice, usually so sharp and abrupt, now sounded unusually monotone, but diligently. He pronounced each word clearly, as if diffusing a bomb. Amy looked at him, wide-eyed, completely immersed in the story. Mia retreated into the shadows. She saw his profile in the soft lamplight. His stern features seemed less harsh. He turned the page, and his finger, usually clutching a phone or a pen, touched the paper carefully, so as not to wrinkle it. In that moment, he wasn't a formidable boss. He was simply a man reading a book to a child he barely knew. Mia's heart sank with a strange, mixed emotion. The fear was still there, but it was joined by confusion. Who was this man? Why was he doing all this? Why was he playing this strange game of family? When the reading was finished and Amy yawned and said, "Thank you, Uncle Jung-ho. More tomorrow?" He simply nodded. "If you want, now go to Mom." Amy ran out into the hallway and immediately saw Mia. "Mom, did you hear? Uncle Jung-ho reads like a robot. But it's funny. He said he'll read more tomorrow." Mia took her daughter's hand and led her into the room. She glanced back at the library door. Jung-ho was now standing in the doorway, watching them go. His face was once again an impenetrable mask, but something like a question flickered briefly in his eyes as they caught her gaze. Or a challenge. He nodded slowly to her, as if to a business partner after a deal had been made, and closed the library door. In her room, as she tucked Amy in, Mia thought about that nod. It wasn't a gesture of friendship. It was a reminder of her choice, that she had agreed to stay, and that he set the rules in this beautiful white house. And now she had to figure out what those rules were and how to survive them, keeping herself and her daughter safe. The first day was drawing to a close, and the feeling of being trapped only intensified, taking on new, even more complex nuances. She wasn't a prisoner, but a guest who feared her host and didn't know when she could leave. The next morning began with an unusual feeling. Mia woke not to the sound of an alarm clock or the sound of traffic outside, but to the silence and soft light streaming through the thick curtains. She lay there for a few minutes, listening. Nothing. No banging pipes. No neighbors shouting, no garbage truck rumble, just the quiet chirping of birds outside. She stood up and walked to the door to the adjoining room. Amy was still asleep, her nose buried in the pillow. On the chair next to her bed lay a neat stack of new children's clothes, simple, high quality, without flashy logos. Next to it stood a basket of toys, a wooden construction set, a drawing set, a few books. Everything was new, but not pretentious, just as Young-ho had promised. Mia felt both relief and annoyance. He was fulfilling his obligations. He was providing. And in doing so, he was making them even more obligated. When Amy woke up and saw the gifts, her delight knew no bounds. "Mom, look, are these all for us?" "Really?" She was already grabbing markers. Mia could only nod, feeling the walls closing in. These gifts weren't just gestures of goodwill. They were links in a chain. During breakfast, Mrs. Kang appeared in the small, sunny room adjacent to the kitchen. "Mr. Chung-ho asked me to tell you he's busy until this evening. You're free to move around the first floor and the garden. If you need anything—" "I know," Mia interrupted. "I'll ring the bell or come find you." "Thank you." After breakfast, Dr. Kim gave me a quick examination. He was pleased. "My strength is returning. The key is rest and a low-stress diet." "A low-stress diet," Mia repeated with a bitter smile as he left. "Easy to say." She decided to explore the garden. Take Amy outside. The sunlight and space would clear her head. The garden was vast and lifelessly perfect. Mown lawns, an ivy-covered gazebo, gravel paths, not a weed, not a fallen leaf. Amy ran through the grass but soon stopped, looking around. "It's boring here, Mom." "No swings, no playhouse. Not even bugs. They're probably weeding everything out," Mia said, sitting down on a stone bench. The cold of the stone seeped through the thin fabric of her robe. She looked at the high blank fence. The cameras around the perimeter slowly turned. Security, isolation. It was safe and absolutely hopeless. Suddenly, Amy noticed a figure at the other exit of the house. It was Young-ho. He was talking to Jin-woo. Both were wearing dark suits, their faces serious. Jin-woo was saying something, pointing at his tablet. Young-ho was listening, his gaze cold and focused, completely unlike the fairy tale reader of yesterday. It was the look of a master making decisions that matter. Amy waved at him without thinking. "Uncle Jung-ho? Hello?" He paused, turning his head. His gaze met Mia's from across the garden. His expression remained unchanged, but he nodded slightly in their direction, then motioned for Jin-woo to stop his report. He said something short and crossed the lawn toward them. Mia instinctively hunched her shoulders, as if bracing herself for a blow. But no blow came. He walked over and stopped 2 steps away. "You look better," he said, looking at Mia. "Thank you. Dr. Kim says I'm on the mend." "Good." He turned his gaze to Amy. "Do you like it here?" "The house is great, but the garden, it's a bit boring," Amy said with childish frankness. "There's nothing to play with." Jung-ho raised an eyebrow in surprise. It seemed the very idea that anything in his domain could be boring had never occurred to him. "What do we need for the game?" he asked seriously, as if clarifying the technical requirements. "Well, a swing, or a treehouse, or maybe we could plant some flowers ourselves, to attract butterflies." Amy lit up. Jung-ho nodded slowly, his gaze sweeping over the sterile landscape. "I'll think about it," he said. Then he looked back at Mia. "Aren't you cold here?" "A little," she admitted. "The stone is cold." He nodded again, turned and walked back to Jin-woo without saying goodbye. The conversation with his right hand resumed. "He's weird," Amy said as he walked away. "But he's listening." "Yes," Mia agreed quietly. "He's listening." Half an hour later, as they were about to go inside, Mrs. Kang came out with 2 soft woolen blankets. "Mr. Chung-ho ordered that you be kept warm, and he asked me to find out what flowers you'd like to plant for the butterflies." Mia looked at the blanket in the housekeeper's hands. It wasn't a kind gesture. It was a test of obedience. He'd asked, and she'd answered coldly. He'd solved the problem. Now she had to answer his question about the flowers, join his game of decorating this place, take a step toward claiming it as her own. Tell him, lavender, please, and maybe echinacea. They do well in the sun, she said, her voice resigned. She hated that tone in herself. Mrs. Khan nodded and left. Mia felt on edge the rest of the day. She tried reading in the library, but her eyes skimmed the lines, missing the meaning. Amy was drawing raptly in her room, perfectly happy, and Mia caught herself listening to footsteps in the hallway, to the sound of doors opening, to his presence, which was felt even in his absence. He didn't show up for lunch. He didn't show up for dinner. But when Mia was putting Amy to bed that evening, the girl asked, "Mom, is Uncle Jung-ho coming over to read tonight? He promised to think about it." "I don't know, honey. He's probably really busy. But he promised to think about it," Amy insisted. "So he'll come." And he came. Exactly 15 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. It wasn't Mrs. Khan. He stood there, still wearing the same dark suit, but without the jacket, holding a book. "May I come in?" he asked, looking at Mia, but the question seemed addressed to Amy. She nodded happily. He settled back into the chair and opened the book. Mia remained standing by the door, watching. He was reading again in his even, emotionless voice, but today, Amy began asking questions. Why was the rabbit scared? Jung-ho paused, looked at the illustration, then at the girl. Because he was alone, and he didn't know what would happen next. "Like Mom and I were when you got the call?" Amy asked. Jung-ho froze. His gaze met Mia's for a second. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Understanding. "Yes," he said quietly. "Perhaps so." He finished the chapter and closed the book. "That's all for today. Time to sleep." Amy obediently climbed under the covers. "Good night, Uncle Jung-ho." "Thank you." "Good night, Amy." He stepped out into the hallway. Mia followed him, closing the door behind her. "Thank you," she said to his back, "for the book, and for the blankets." He turned around. In the light of the hallway's nightlight, his face seemed carved from dark stone. "It's practical. You shouldn't be freezing in your own house," he said, and he left, leaving her alone with that phrase hanging in the air. "In my house," he said it with complete seriousness, as a statement of fact. Mia returned to her room, sat on her bed, and stared into the darkness. The fear was still there, but now something else was mixed in. Curiosity, confusion, the first tiny crack in her certainty that he was simply a dangerous tyrant. He didn't just keep them locked away. He listened. He eliminated the boring and cold. He read stories, and he called this place her home, and that was what scared her most, because it meant there was no simple explanation for his actions, and that perhaps getting out of here would be 100 times harder than she thought. After all, how do you escape from a prison where there are no bars on the windows, where they give you toys and ask you about flowers for butterflies? Reading before bed becomes a ritual. Every night, Jung-ho appears with a book. His reading remains monotonous, but Amy no longer notices it. She is immersed in the stories. Mia sits to the side, knitting or simply looking out the window, but she listens to every word, both his and her daughter says. One evening, after a story, Amy asks a question that makes Mia's heart stop. "Uncle Jung-ho, what do you do for a living?" "You're not a doctor." The silence in the room grows thick. Jung-ho slowly closes the book. "I solve problems," he says, choosing his words carefully. "I have a business." "What business? Do you make cars or build houses?" the girl insists. "I maintain order." His answer sounds like a well-honed formula, so that everything works the way it should. Amy wrinkles her brow, not understanding. Mia understands all too well. She stands up. "Thank you for reading." "Amy, it's late." Jung-ho catches her gaze and sees not just fear in it, but cold understanding. He nods, says goodbye to Amy, and leaves. That night, Mia cannot sleep for a long time. The words, "maintain order," ring in her head. The next day, a strange woman shows up at the house. Tall, with perfectly coiffed black hair, wearing a formal black suit. She arrived unannounced. Mia and Amy were just returning from a walk in the garden, where the first flowers had finally bloomed. The woman stood in the hall, talking to Jung-ho. Her voice was low and ingratiating, her gestures sharp. Seeing Mia and her daughter, she fell silent, and slowly, appraisingly, glanced at them. Her smile was cold and unkind. "What lovely guests, Jung-ho," she said. "I didn't know you opened a boarding house." Jung-ho didn't move, but the air around him turned icy. "Business is concluded, So-yoon. Jin-woo will see you out." The woman, So-yoon, slid her gaze over Mia once more, as if cataloging her flaws, and silently left. Amy clung to her mother. "Mom, who's that woman? She's scary." Jung-ho approached them, his face tense. "It doesn't matter. She won't be coming in here again." He looked at Mia. "I'm sorry to bother you." But it was too late. The woman's visit seemed to have let Jung-ho's real world into the White House, a world of sharp glances, unspoken threats, and the order he provided. The beautiful illusion had cracked. That evening, Jung-ho didn't come to read. Amy waited, but then fell asleep. Mia sat in the living room, staring at the fire in the fireplace. She thought about that woman, about how this house was just a quiet respite in the eye of the storm. She heard footsteps. He entered and stopped by the fireplace, looking at the flames. She was right, Mia said quietly, not looking at him. We're just guests here, and your business will sooner or later walk through this door again. Young-ho was silent. It was a mistake. It won't happen again. And we are a mistake? Mia finally looked at him. He turned. There was no anger in his eyes. There was weariness. No, he said firmly. Then he paused. You can leave tomorrow morning if you want. Mia hadn't expected this. She braced herself for excuses, for threats. Why? She asked, confused. Because you're afraid, not just for yourself. For her, he nodded towards Amy's room. And you're right. My world is not for children, and maybe not for you. He spoke evenly, but there was something like regret in his voice. You're giving us a choice. A real one? A real one. If you say yes, you'll be taken home in the morning, and you won't see me again. He waited for her answer, standing still as a rock, and Mia knew this was the most dangerous moment, because now she had to say no, and she didn't know if she could. The word yes stuck in Mia's throat. It was logical. Correct. The only true answer for any normal woman in her situation. Say yes. Return to her small, squalid, but her own apartment. Forget this white nightmare of velvet and silence. But she remained silent. She looked at this man who was offering her freedom and saw in his eyes not relief, but anticipation of a blow. He had given her a choice, but with all his being, he expected her to choose to stay. And that was more terrifying than any threat. Mia finally said, looking at the smoldering embers in the fireplace, that woman, she's not just a business partner. She looked at Amy as a nuisance. So Yoon won't be coming here again. She's been sanctioned, Jung-ho snapped, his voice taking on a familiar, icy authority for the first time. But he softened immediately. It's my mistake, my weakness. You shouldn't have to pay for it. Weakness? Mia asked in surprise, letting emotions influence my calculations. Bringing you here without securing the perimeter from internal threats, he said dryly, as if he were talking about a failed business operation. I'll fix it, but to fix it, I need to know your decision. Mia stood up and went to the window. The night was pitch black, devoid of any city light. Somewhere out there was her old life, the struggle for every penny, the fear of the future, the loneliness. And here was peace, safety, and danger masquerading as care. If we leave, what will happen? Will you really leave us alone? She asked without turning around. Yes, he replied without hesitation. You'll just become an unpleasant memory of a mistake. It's not my nature to delve into the past. What if we stay? Mia's voice wavered. Then you will become part of this house. Its most guarded assets. No threat, internal or external, will touch you. You will have everything you need. And, he hesitated, and you will never have to fear tomorrow. Ever. It wasn't a request. It was an offer. A contract. Her safety and peace in exchange for her presence. For her presence to fill this terrifying silence. I need time. Until the morning, Mia said. Before breakfast, Young-ho nodded and left the living room, leaving her alone with the most difficult dilemma of her life. Mia tossed and turned all night. She'd come to Amy's bed and look at her calm, carefree face. The girl had changed in just a week, rosy-cheeked, plump, and joyful. She'd chatter about the garden, about books, about Uncle Young-ho, who, though strange, was one of them. What could she give her alone? Fear, poverty, constant, exhausting work? And what did this man give? Stability. Education, a future, at the cost of freedom. But what is freedom when you have to choose between paying bills and eating? At dawn, Mia fell asleep for an hour and woke with the clarity of despair. She knew the answer, not the right one, but the only one possible for a mother. At breakfast, Amy, as always, chattered incessantly. Chung-ho was gone. Mia had barely eaten anything. Amy, honey, tell me honestly, are you happy here? Yes, the girl's eyes lit up. Very! I have my own room, and books, and a garden, and Mrs. Kang teaches me how to bake cookies, and Uncle Chung-ho reads to me at night. We're not leaving, are we? There was such horror in her voice at that last sentence that Mia shuddered. Her daughter had already become attached. She didn't want to go back. Mom will decide, Mia said softly. After breakfast, Mrs. Kang said that Mr. Chung-ho was waiting for her in the winter garden. He stood among the orchids, so rare and unearthly in this space. He didn't ask right away. He waited. We're staying, Mia breathed out, not looking at him. But I have conditions. Speak. Amy must go to a proper school. Socialize, not be a recluse. A home school will be organized with the best teachers. Outings into the world will be supervised, he retorted. I need a job. Any kind of job. I can't just sit around doing nothing. He thought for a moment. You can help Mrs. Kang with the library. Catalog books. It's a big job. And I want to know what's going on. Not your business. She looked at him directly. But what threatens us? Like that woman. Without details, but so that I'm not in the dark. Chung-ho looked at her for a long time. This condition was clearly unexpected for him. This is not your war, he said quietly, but it could come to my doorstep. I have to be prepared. He nodded slowly. Okay, you will be aware of the bare minimum. So-yoon is a former partner. Her ambition outstripped loyalty. She saw a weakness in you that could be used against me. Now she knows that it's not a weakness. It's a rule. A new rule. Mia swallowed. He had just admitted that their presence had changed the order of his empire. And one last thing, her voice wavered. Promise me you will not harm Amy. Never. Not in word or deed. Jung-ho tore his gaze from the orchid and looked at her. There was no anger or surprise in his eyes. There was a strange, almost paternal seriousness. I swear on my honor, as long as I live, nothing will happen to her. I will take care of her. It was more than she expected. Mia nodded, feeling her legs buckle. The deal was done. The decision was made. Mia felt like a traitor, having traded her freedom for a full stomach. But when she saw Amy joyfully running into the garden, where workers, on Jung-ho's instructions, had already begun installing a small but sturdy swing, some of the heaviness lifted from her heart. Jin-woo came to see her that afternoon. He was respectful but cold. Mrs. Miller, the boss has instructed me to brief you on security measures. You and Amy will be given special phones with one button. A red button. It connects directly to me or the boss. Always. If anything triggers an alarm, press it. Additional hidden guards are posted in the garden and at all exits. You do not need to look for them. They will see you. Please do not leave the area unaccompanied. I understand, Mia said. And what about that So-yoon? Jin-woo's face became inscrutable. That matter is closed. She is no longer of interest. From the way he said it, Mia understood that closed meant forever. She felt uneasy. That evening, Jung-ho came to read as if nothing had happened. But after Amy fell asleep, he didn't leave right away. He remained standing in the doorway. Thank you, he said unexpectedly. For what? Mia asked in surprise. For your trust. It's valuable. He paused. Amy's tutor will be arriving tomorrow, and the books for the library await your attention. Good night, Mia. He called her by name for the first time. Not Miss Miller, but simply Mia. And he left. Mia remained standing in the middle of the room. Everything was decided. There was no turning back. She had found a fortress for her daughter and a prison for herself. But this prison was full of books, sunlight, and the strange, incomprehensible attention of a man who now looked at her not as a hostage, but as an ally, a kindred spirit? She didn't know. She went to the window and saw his figure below, in the garden. He stood alone, looking at the new swing, swaying in the night breeze. Then he turned and looked at her window. Did he see her in the darkness? She flinched. When she looked out again, he was gone. Silence reigned in the house, but now it was a silence she had chosen. It was filled not with fear of the unknown outside, but with anxious anticipation of what would happen within these high white walls. The games were just beginning. One day after school, Amy found a teddy bear on her bed. Not a new one from the store, but an old one, with one eye sewn on and a worn paw. It looked like it had been waiting for years. Pinned to it was a note in firm handwriting. His name is Yuri. He was looking for a friend too. Amy pressed the bear to her cheek. Mom, look, it's real! Mia's throat tightened. This wasn't a gift to buy loyalty. It was personal. She saw Jung-ho peering around the corner as Amy ran joyfully toward him to thank him. He merely nodded, but the corner of his mouth twitched. He hadn't given her a toy. He had shared a memory. Boss, people are talking. Jin-woo stood there reporting, but his eyes told a different story. So-yoon didn't leave without a reason. Because of them. Jung-ho didn't look up from the monitor. They're under my protection now. That changes the rules. But they're a weakness. They can be used against you. Jung-ho slowly raised his head. You're wrong. They're not a weakness. They're a reason. A reason not to descend into the darkness from which we both emerged. That's their strength, and mine. Jin-woo was silent. For the first time in 15 years, he saw in his boss's eyes not calculation, but a reason that couldn't be converted into money. Mrs. Kang set the table with popcorn. Amy chose a cartoon. Mia sat in the far chair, and Jung-ho sat against the opposite wall, as if in a meeting. But when a silly song started playing on the screen, Amy began to giggle. Mia couldn't help but smile. And then she heard another sound, a short, hoarse exhalation. She looked at Jung-ho. He sat with his head propped up in his hand, his shoulders shaking slightly. He wasn't laughing out loud, He was just quietly choking on the laughter, like someone unaccustomed to that reaction. Amy didn't notice, but Mia did, and in that moment, he stopped being just the boss. He became a man who had forgotten how to watch cartoons. Mia was helping Mrs. Khan sort through the books in the library. A yellowed photograph of a young man fell out of an old encyclopedia. Jung Ho, without a scar, with a soft gaze. Next to him, a woman with a kind smile and a little girl in her arms. On the back, a date and a single word in Korean. Mrs. Kang, entering the room, froze. "Give me this, please," her voice wavered. Mia silently handed over the photograph. Mia began. They were his world, the housekeeper said quietly. And then there was no world. Until now. She left, clutching the photograph tightly. Now Mia understood the nature of the silence they had broken. From the winter garden window, Mia saw a black car pull up to the gate. An agitated man emerged, gesturing at Jinwoo. Suddenly, everything froze. Jung Ho emerged from the house. He walked slowly, without rushing. He didn't raise his voice. He simply approached, listened for a second, and then said one thing, just one phrase, and the man in front of him went limp, not from fear, but from icy, absolute understanding. He nodded submissively, got into the car, and drove away. Jung Ho turned, and as if sensing her gaze, met Mia's eyes through the glass. No malice, no rage, only emptiness, the same emptiness he had emerged from while reading Amy's story. He entered the house, and for a long time, Mia couldn't warm her frozen hands. That evening, he came not to the nursery, but to her living room. "You saw," he said. It wasn't a question. "I saw. You destroyed him." "No, I saved his business by taking a share. He will live, but he will never set foot in those gates again. That's what it means to maintain order, sometimes cruelly, always effectively." He came closer. "You and Amy are part of that order now. So the rule, don't go outside the perimeter alone, ever. It's not control. It's a physical law, like gravity. Break it, and you fall. And I might not make it in time." Mia nodded. For the first time, she understood the rules not as a whim, but as a necessity. Jung Ho stood by the window in his office, his face hard from the phone call. A small head poked through the door. "Uncle Jung Ho?" He didn't answer or turn around, still lost in his thoughts. Amy entered, came over, and simply wrapped her arms around his leg, pressing her cheek against the fabric of his pants. He flinched as if struck. "Are you sad?" she asked, looking up. "Here, Yuri, he's helping." And she thrust a worn-out teddy bear into his hand. Jung Ho looked from the girl to the toy. Slowly, as if afraid to break it, he placed his large palm on her head. "Thank you," he said hoarsely, not sad anymore. Amy smiled and ran off. He stared at the bear in his hand for a long time. The hand that an hour ago had dictated terms, had broken destinies, and now held a worn-out toy. The child's trust proved to be the most terrible and most desirable weapon of all. It disarmed him completely. It happened at chess. To Mia's surprise, Jung Ho proved to be a patient but ruthless teacher. He had already explained for the third time why her king was in danger. Mia, usually focused this time, out of fatigue and frustration, made an absurd move. She placed her rook under direct attack from his queen. She realized her mistake and gasped. Jung Ho looked at the board, then at her upset face. And suddenly, in a dry, decisive tone, he said, "This isn't a move. This is suicide, with elements of betrayal of one's own army." It sounded so absurd and so accurate that Mia blinked, and then a strange sound escaped her throat, something between a sob and a cough, and then a real ringing laugh. She laughed, covering her face with her hands. She hadn't laughed so sincerely and loudly, it seemed, since Amy was born. Jung Ho didn't laugh. He watched, but the finest wrinkles gathered in the corners of his eyes. He pushed his queen aside. "Let's start the game over. Your rook, I see, is showing signs of desertion. We need to boost its morale." And she laughed again. The ice hadn't melted, but the first ringing crack appeared in it. The conversation began late that night, after Amy had fallen asleep. They were drinking tea in the library. He asked not about everyday life, but about the essence of it. "Amy is wise beyond her years. That's because of you," he stated. "Out of necessity," Mia sighed, looking at the steam. "Her father disappeared when I was 5 months pregnant, said he wasn't ready. I never saw him again." She spoke without self-pity, simply stating the facts. "I worked 3 jobs, nanny, waitress, office cleaner, anything to put food on the table and a roof over her head. There was no time to laugh. Constant fear." Jung Ho listened without interrupting. "Fear is a poor companion," he finally said. "But it is a reliable one," Mia countered. "It keeps you from relaxing. It forces you to survive. Survival is not life. It is a postponement of death." His words were harsh, but there was no judgment in them. There was understanding. "You are strong, but strength spent solely on survival is wasted." "And what is it worth spending it on?" Mia asked challengingly. He looked at her. "On building, a garden, a fortress, A future. What will remain after you? She was silent. He had just described his life, and perhaps he was offering her a new path. The Saturday morning silence was shattered by the roar of several engines. From the window, Mia saw 3 black SUVs pull up to the gate. Not the modest cars of her partners, but aggressive, tinted ones. 7 men in tracksuits emerged. Their postures, their glances scanning the area, screamed one thing. This wasn't a courtesy visit. This was a test of strength. Jin Woo and 2 security guards were already standing at the inner gate, blocking the entrance. Mia, clutching the red phone, froze by the window. Amy, sensing something was wrong, fell silent nearby. "Mom, what is this?" Before Mia could answer, the door to her room quietly opened. Jung-ho stood there. He was jacketless, his sleeves rolled up. His expression wasn't anger, but a cold, almost surgical focus. "Down! To the wine cellar! Now!" His voice brooked no argument. He didn't look at her, his gaze fixed on the tablet in his hand, which was streaming footage from the security cameras at the gate. "What's going on?" "It doesn't matter. You're safe. Go!" The wine cellar wasn't just a storage room. It was a fortified space behind a secret door on the ground floor. It was quiet, cool, and had a sofa. Mrs. Khan was already there with a thermos of tea and coloring books for Amy. "Stay here. Don't come out until I come in person," Jung-ho said, his eyes meeting Mia's for a second. There was no fear in them. There was iron confidence and something else. A warning. "Whatever you hear, this is not your war. Your job is to remain silent and wait." He walked out, and the door closed silently. Mia hugged Amy. They heard muffled sounds, footsteps upstairs, distant voices, then a sharp, abrupt shout in Korean. Not Jung-ho, someone else, screaming in anger. Amy was shaking. "Will they beat Uncle Jung-ho?" "No, baby," Mia whispered, surprised at her own certainty. "They're afraid of him." She could tell by the tone of her scream. It held the anger of impotence. Chung-ho stood in the doorway again. He was wearing the same jacket. On his hands, on the snow-white cuff, a single small, clear drop of red blood lay. Not his. "It's over. They're gone," he said simply. His gaze fell on the drop. Slowly, without fuss, he rolled up the cuff, hiding it. "Sorry to disturb you. You can go back upstairs." He didn't explain anything, but the moment he turned, Mia saw not a mafia boss, but a wolf, driving the intruders from his territory. Both she and Amy were part of that territory. His final rule wasn't a word, but a deed. He hid them in the safest place, while he went out to deal with the threat. It was the clearest declaration of his intentions possible. They were protected, at a cost she was only just beginning to understand. After that incident at the gate, a new, fragile silence settled over the house. Mia didn't ask questions. Jung-ho didn't offer explanations. But one evening, when Amy was already asleep, he found Mia in the winter garden. She was simply staring into the darkness beyond the glass, hugging herself. He stopped next to her, not looking at her. "They came because they heard about you and the girl. They thought they found leverage. Weakness." His voice was quiet and even in the silence of the greenhouse. Mia cringed. She thought so. "They were wrong," he continued. He turned to her, and there was not a drop of doubt in his gaze. "You are not a weakness. You are a red line, one that cannot be crossed. They understood it today. Everyone will understand it now." "Understood? How?" Mia whispered, afraid of the answer. "At the cost of 1 broken face and 3 broken contracts," he answered simply. "I did not touch their lives. I deprived them of profit. In our world, it hurts more, and more understandable." He took a step closer, and now his words sounded not like a threat to the world, but like a vow to her. "You are safe, Mia. She is safe. This is not a question of luck or circumstance. It's a fact, like the walls of this house. Remember that." He left, leaving her with those words. They hung in the warm, damp air among the orchids, not just a phrase. They were the foundation on which she could now stand, if she chose. It was Amy who took the initiative. She asked Mrs. Kang at dinner, "Why does Uncle Jung-ho always eat alone? Is he sad?" The housekeeper, stunned, relayed the question, and now the 3 of them sat at the large dining table. Jung-ho at the head, Mia and Amy across from each other. It was awkward. The silence was broken only by the clink of cutlery. Amy, as always, broke the tension. "Uncle Jung-ho, do you like fish?" "I'm not so much, but Mom says I should." Jung-ho looked at the plate as if he were seeing fish for the first time. "It's healthy," he said after a pause. "Then it's not tasty," Amy laughed. "The cookies. That's it." Mia wanted to stop her, but saw Jung-ho looking at the laughing girl, not with bewilderment, but with some kind of dull, long-forgotten tenderness. "Cookies are a strategic reserve of happiness," he said unexpectedly, in a serious tone. "You can't waste them." Amy burst into laughter, and then something happened. The corners of Jung-ho's lips twitched. Then they lifted. It wasn't a smile. It was her very first hesitant sketch, but it was exactly it. Mia, watching this, suddenly felt not fear, but something else, almost warmth. They ate tasteless fish, laughed over cookies, and for a moment, it ceased to be the home of a mafia boss. It became simply a house where three people were having dinner. Night, the office. The reports are spread out, but he can't see them. In front of him lies a small, crookedly colored postcard. Amy made it with Mrs. Khan's help. 3 figures, a large black one, him, a smaller one with yellow curls, Mia, and a small brown one, Amy. At the bottom is the signature, My Family. He looks at the word, family. It burns like acid. He had a family. It was taken away. He buried the word with them, encased it in the concrete of his power and loneliness. And now, a little girl who's afraid of fish has handed it back to him, glued on with glitter. He thinks of Mia, of her laughter over chess, of her stubbornness as she negotiated the terms, of the fear in her eyes, giving way to fragile trust. He analyzes his actions of the last few weeks, not as tactics, but as impulses. He gave Yuri away. He read a dozen children's books. He routed the visitors, not as a show of force, but because the thought that they might even see her, or the girl, evoked in him a pure animalistic rage. Family. It's not an asset, not a weakness. It's a reboot. New code, written over the old bloody one. He looks at his hands. They could do many things. Now they were holding a glitter card, and that turned out to be more difficult than everything else. He's not in love. The concept is too shallow, too romantic. This is something deeper, a confession. She and the girl have become his territory in the most ancient, primordial sense. A place to protect, not out of calculation, but because it's necessary, because otherwise, life will return to the endless, quiet desert it was before the call. Jung Ho carefully, as if diffusing a mine, places the postcard in the top drawer of his desk. Next to the pistol, 2 most important objects, one to protect this new fragile reality, the other a symbol of it. He doesn't yet know what to do with it, but he already understands. There is no turning back. They are his now, and he is theirs, forever. They were left alone in the library after Amy fell asleep. The silence wasn't awkward, but tired, peaceful. Mia studied the spine of the book, then said without looking up, I wasn't afraid much today. When we were having dinner, it's strange. Jung Ho put the newspaper down. Fear is a habit. Habits can be unlearned. What habits have you unlearned? She ventured. He was silent for a long time. He looked at the fire in the fireplace. The habit of not noticing what time of year it is outside. The idea that silence is the norm. The feeling that tomorrow will be the same as yesterday, and there's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong with that? Stability? Meaninglessness, he said quietly. I built an empire out of fear and respect, but it was uninhabitable. It was like this house before you. Perfect and dead. Mia looked at him. Why didn't you send us away then on the first day? It would have been easier. He met her gaze. Because your voice on the phone was the first real thing I'd heard in years. There was no calculation in it, just pure absolute need. And I felt need too, for that need to be silenced, for everything to be okay on the other end of the line. He admitted this without a pathos, as if it were weakness, and it was more sincere than any oath. I'm scared, Mia admitted, not for safety, but because I'm starting to forget what it's like to be afraid for tomorrow. It feels dangerous. It's not danger, it's life, he corrected, and I'm responsible for your tomorrow. It's my only job now. He didn't expect gratitude. He simply stated a fact, and in this quiet library, by the light of the lamp in the fireplace, Mia trusted him completely for the first time, not as a boss, but as a man who had given his word. She nodded, and that was enough. He handed her a small, dark wooden box for no reason, not a birthday, not a holiday, just one morning when she was drinking coffee in the winter garden. What is this? Open it. Inside, on the velvet, lay neither a brooch nor a necklace. It was a hairpin, simple, made of dark jade, in the shape of a curved wave. No diamonds, no gold, but the workmanship was so fine that the stone seemed alive, warm. It's beautiful, but why? It's not jewelry, he said, looking at the hairpin, not at her. It's a hasty, my grandmother's. In our house, the women had these, to keep their hair out of the way while they worked, to keep their hands free. She gave it to my mother. Mia froze, realizing the weight of the object in her hands. I can't. It's too personal. She was a strong woman, like you. He finally looked at her. She would have approved. Wear it. It's not a gift. It's an amulet. From one house to another, he touched on the subject of family, of continuity, without uttering a single unnecessary word. Mia took the pin. The stone was truly warm. She wouldn't wear it today, but she understood. He wasn't offering her wealth. He was offering her a place. In the history of this house, which, it turns out, wasn't all black, this simple thing held not a price, but a legacy. And trust. Mia sat in her room, a hairpin in her hand. She thought not of the past, but of the future. A strange, vague future that was no longer her own. It was shared with him, with Amy. She sketched a garden plan in her notebook. Lavender for the butterflies Amy had mentioned, maybe a small herb garden, a bench by the swing. Like simple, mundane plans that somehow now seemed revolutionary. She could make them come true. Here, in this fortress. But along with hope came a chill of doubt. Who would she become? Her boss's adornment? A caring prisoner? The mother of his child? The last thought made her shudder. She looked at Amy sleeping. She would like to give her a brother or a sister. But in this world, with this father, she wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of the world he kept behind a high fence. And she was afraid that one day this world would demand payment from him for their quiet happiness. And she knew he would pay without hesitation, at a price she might not even immediately understand. She hid the notebook and the pin in the box. The future was simultaneously terrifying and inexorably desirable. Like a leap into warm but unfamiliar water, she decided to stop fighting the current. But keep her eyes open. The conversation in the office was different, more businesslike. Zhang Aho and Jin Wu weren't discussing contracts, but liquidation. The supply department at the port. So Yoon was the key link there. We need to restructure the system. Remove her people, Jin Wu was saying. Remove! Not physically, fire. Pay severance pay and erase from memory, Zhang Ho corrected. We're beginning the process of legitimization, slowly, step by step. An empire of fear is short-lived. We need an empire of legitimate business. For that, we need clean assets and a clean reputation. Jin Wu looked at him as if he were crazy. Boss, this will take years, and we'll lose influence. Influence built on fear is an illusion. It disappears as soon as someone more fearsome appears. I want to leave behind not a legend, but a foundation, a university, something real. Zhang Ho's voice was calm. I now have a reason to think decades ahead. The reason? She was asleep in the next wing, drawing garden plans. And what should I do first? Jin Wu asked. Niece, capitulating. Hire the best family and immigration lawyers, quietly, and check all my assets for any dark past. Anything that might surface and touch them. Sell, register, bury. In 5 years, I want my name to be associated only with charity and business. He gave orders to dismantle his old life, brick by brick, to build a new, solid home, a reliable foundation for their shared future. He invited her into the garden after dinner. The moon was full and silver, the swing casting long shadows. Amy was already asleep. They walked silently along the path. He didn't initiate conversation. He simply led her to an old stone bench under a huge maple tree. I've thought it all over, he began, looking not at her, but at the moonlit path on the lawn. You're free, still free, to leave, to stay as a guest, or, he fell silent, choosing his words with visible effort for the first time, or to become the mistress of this house, not a kidnapped princess, not a guest, mistress, my wife. He said it without pathos, almost dryly, but his hands, resting on his knees, were clenched into fists. Mia stopped breathing. She expected anything but such a direct, completely unromantic proposal. Why? She breathed out. Because I don't want you to ever feel like this is temporary or incomplete. Because I want Amy to carry my name and know that this is her home by right. Because he turned to her and his moonlit eyes held everything, the loneliness of years past, and determination, and that same unspoken need. Because I can no longer imagine tomorrow without you. Not legally, not in my thoughts. This is not romance. This is necessity. Mine. I hope yours too. He didn't kneel. He didn't take out a ring. He was offering her a partnership, the most important contract of his life. Mia looked at him, at this strong, dangerous, broken and rebuilt man who had learned to laugh and read fairy tales, who was breaking his empire for the sake of her future. Who offered her not a ring, but his grandmother's jade pin. She was afraid, but fear was an old, familiar friend, and what she felt now, looking at him, was new. It was a decision. She nodded slowly. Yes, she said quietly, but with a condition. What? His voice was tense. Ask Amy. If she says yes, then my answer is yes. An expression she had never seen before appeared on his face, profound, almost childish bewilderment, mixed with respect. He nodded. The next day, serious and pale, he asked the 5-year-old girl the most important question of his life. And when Amy, hugging Yuri, joyfully cried out, Yes, yes, so you're our Uncle Jung, ho, forever, right? He knew he had it all. And Mia, watching this Shua, understood that her condition had not been a test for him. It had been the last doubt for herself, and now it was gone.